In the morning, when you wake up, the darkest image you can have of the society you live in is that you go out with your friends, but suddenly you remember that you must dress according to a specific pattern. And your hair is going to be just one specific style from now on, with no news of hair color or diverse hairstyles. They don't even have cosmetics for women to use for makeup. You can no longer freely talk with your friends about anything you want. One wrong word could lead to the downfall of the next generation. You might reach a point of starvation where you have to hunt for rats, and the warning of this video tells the story of people who have truly experienced these conditions. Stories that may be hard to believe, but they have felt this hell with their own skin and bones, and right now, these events are still happening in North Korea. Let's start from here. How can a country reach this point? How does a nation suddenly turn into puppets that must dance to every tune? The story began when one day a young leader decided to separate his path from the rest of the world, a decision that forever changed the fate of millions. After the Korean War in the early 1950s, Kim Il-sung decided to separate his path from the Soviet Union. It was here that he introduced a system called Songbun, a regime that determines your fate not by talent, not by effort, and not even by money, but only by your loyalty to the leader. Imagine a society that divides people into three categories: loyal, wavering, and enemy, like upper, middle, and lower classes, but with a terrifying difference. What is the difference between this system and ordinary social classes? In the ordinary world, we might be able to improve our living conditions through hard work and perseverance, but in North Korea, this classification affects your family for 3 generations. This means that if your grandfather made a critical remark about the government, not only he, but you and your father would also be punished. And it doesn't matter how loyal you are to the government. However, the interesting thing is that if you belong to the loyal group, the best facilities in North Korea are at your disposal, from education to job opportunities and even access to food during famines. But if you belong to the enemy group, well, in the best case, you are sent to a forced labor camp. Of course, if we can even call this the best case, and for those who are identified as serious enemies, death awaits them. According to some reports, this punishment can take the form of execution by firing squad, beheading, or hanging. To provide a good lesson to the others, these punishments are carried out in front of the public eye. But Kim Il-sung thought this was not enough. In 1972, he introduced a new ideology called Juche, an ideology that looked beautiful on paper: autonomy in thought, independence in politics, and self-sufficiency in the economy, and self-reliance in defense. At first glance, these principles might not seem too bad, but wait until you see what's behind the scenes. Kim Il-sung decided to turn his country into a military power. He built military bases, created underground hangars for airplanes, and encouraged people to fight for their country. But this was just the beginning of the story. The new ideology meant that the government had control over everything within its borders. Statues of Kim Il-sung were placed everywhere in the country to convey to the people that he was a popular leader, and of course, foreign travel was also restricted, and they took complete control of the media. Do you know who can currently leave North Korea? Only diplomats, elite students, selected workers, and athletes, and not that easily. They are under constant surveillance, and when they return, they must account for where they were and what they did. After the fall of the Soviet Union, Kim Il-sung gradually fell ill, and his son Kim Jong-il began to take power. In 1994, when his father passed away, he officially became the new leader of North Korea. Although after 3 years of official mourning for the previous leader, even after many years, the day of the former leader's death is still a public mourning day, and if people smile on this day, they are arrested and punished. Kim Jong-il governed the country until he died of a heart attack in 2011, passing the leadership to his son Kim Jong-un. Interestingly, it seems that the heart is a weak point for the Kim family. Both his father and grandfather died of heart attacks. Kim Jong-un, who came from a family whose roots are deeply intertwined with the independence of the country, not only maintained the strange laws of the past, but also made some of them stricter. For example, do you know what laws were enforced during his rule? Men can only choose from 10 hairstyles, and women can choose from 18. Even the photos of previous leaders in every home must be displayed and must be framed higher than the height of all people and hung on the wall. Aside from that, they must always be kept clean and shiny. Inspectors randomly check homes, and if there is even a thin layer of dust on these photos, the entire family may end up in prison. And one more unbelievable thing, if your house catches fire, you must save these photos first, even if your children are burning inside the house. If you save your children first, terrible consequences await you. And if you are a government official, and God forbid you doze off during a ceremony attended by Kim Jong-un, the worst things are waiting for you. Well, it's better to say what happened to the Minister of Defense, Chang. When he fell asleep during a ceremony in 2015, not for a long time, just for a few seconds, he closed his eyes. In front of hundreds of people, this individual was shot down with an anti-aircraft weapon. But these are not the worst. Given that the Kim family is seen as gods in this country, after the death of Kim Il-sung, starting from December 17th each year, North Korea enters a 10-day mourning period. Why? Because this day is the anniversary of Kim Il-sung's death. During these 10 days, citizens of North Korea not only do not have the right to smile, but they cannot drink alcohol, celebrate birthdays, or have any kind of fun or entertainment. If you do any of these things, you may be imprisoned or executed. But the story gets even stranger. The Indian Express newspaper reported that people are not even allowed to leave their homes to buy food on December 17th. And if, God forbid, one of your loved ones passes away during this period, you have no right to mourn for them. You can't even move the corpse. Just think about it. For 10 days, you can't even smile, you can't have joy, and even if you lose a loved one, you have to swallow your grief, because only people have the right to mourn for one person on this day. And now I want to tell you about the darkest part of the story of North Korea, a place where it seems humanity has lost its meaning. International organizations say North Korea has the worst record of human rights violations in the world, and when you hear the stories, you'll understand why. Imagine prisons that are so overcrowded that there's no room to breathe, children forced into labor, and people suffering from hunger. Statistics show that over 13 million people in North Korea suffer from malnutrition, and do you know what percentage of them are children? 60%, that is, out of every 10 hungry people, 6 are children. The situation in prisons is even worse. Prisoners have to eat insects and rats to survive, and during the worst times, seeing corpses on the streets was a normal occurrence. But hunger is not the only problem. Freedom of expression and religion can pose more serious issues. According to reports, about 70,000 Christians are held in North Korean prisons. Interestingly, the capital of North Korea, Pyongyang, has several state-run churches, but these are just a facade for display to foreigners. They want to show the world that they have religious freedom, but international observers say these churches are even closed on Sundays. And as for the media, the people of North Korea are not allowed to connect to the global internet and can only use about 30 state-run websites. For example, one website shows recipes for traditional foods, and television has only 4 state channels full of government propaganda. This system is designed to keep people unaware of the outside world. Any news that is broadcast must first pass through the government filter, or the government itself creates that news. Imagine living in a world where everything is a lie. This narrative shows how human rights violations in North Korea are not limited to one aspect. From hunger to the suppression of religious and media freedoms, everything is designed to maintain complete control over the people. Hearing the stories of individuals who dared to escape this hell brings us closer to the reality of these conditions. the stories of people who have felt all these circumstances with their own skin and bones. Perhaps the most unbelievable escape story belongs to Shin Dong-hyuk, a man who, when he escaped from North Korea at the age of 26 and reached Seoul, finally understood what the world outside the barbed wire looked like. Do you know why? Because he was born in prison. He was born in the notorious Kaechon camp, known as Camp 14. His parents were prisoners who were allowed to marry as a reward. Of course, his father says that the guards gave him Shin's mother as a gift. Imagine people being given away like goods. Until the age of 12, Shin rarely saw his father. The guards told him he was imprisoned because of his parents' crimes, and this matter was normal for him because he thought the whole world was a big prison. But fate had a cruel game in store for him. When he was 13 years old, he heard that his mother and brother wanted to escape. Out of hunger and fear, he informed the guards and then had to watch his family's execution. Shin says that until a new prisoner told him about the outside world, he never even thought of escaping. Do you know what made him want to escape? He says it was the desire to eat, the freedom to eat whatever food he wanted. Finally, after 3 attempts and months of torture, he managed to escape, but his cellmate lost his life when he touched the electric fence. Shin stepped over his friend's corpse to reach freedom. He says, "When I think about the past, this is the biggest sin I have committed." He still feels guilty. However, these escapes, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic, have increased because Kim Jong-un decided to close all borders to protect his citizens. This means cutting off trade with China, cutting off imports of grains, fertilizers, and agricultural equipment. According to the United Nations, 43% of the people are experiencing food insecurity. At the height of this crisis, what order did the government give? Every family must collect 22 pounds of dried human feces to use as fertilizer, and that too during one of the hottest summers. Can you guess what kind of unpleasant atmosphere this can create in the neighborhoods? These narratives show that for some, even the danger of death is better than staying in this country. Of course, not all escape stories are alike. Let me tell you about one girl who, when she was only 13, was sent to Camp 18, also known as Pukchang. What was her crime? Her grandfather had probably escaped to South Korea, and this girl spent 28 years of her life in that camp for this reason. Or the horrifying story of that officer who says he was kicked in the face so many times with boots that he broke his teeth and lost hearing in his left ear. Or that person who says they cut off his finger as punishment, but I was grateful that at least it wasn't public execution. And then there are the children who are sent to forced labor camps because of their parents' or grandparents' crimes. A 5-year-old child describes how he had to go into the mountains for heavy labor in the afternoons. He says the only positive thing was that he could hunt rats, worms, and snakes to fill his hungry stomach. And Dr. Ryu Kwan-chul, who managed to escape from North Korea, revealed a horrifying truth. He says that at one time, babies born with physical differences were immediately killed and buried. They repeatedly told all these individuals one phrase. They told them, from now on, you are no longer human. You don't even have a name. But those who managed to escape say that the hardest part of the ordeal begins right after the escape, learning how to be human again. These narratives show that the North Korean system has not only taken away the freedom from the people, but has also stripped them of their human identity. And perhaps that is the most painful part of the story. And now let me tell you about one of the strangest rumors that circulated during the COVID-19 pandemic, a rumor that said Kim Jong-un is not himself at all. The story began when suddenly the chubby leader of North Korea appeared on camera, looking completely different, thinner, much thinner. Given the family history of heart disease that had taken both his father and grandfather, rumors began that perhaps Kim Jong-un had been hospitalized, or even worse, that he was dead. Some media outlets even published reports of his death and claimed that the man we see in the photos is a body double pretending to be Kim. Who would believe that a leader who loved food and fun suddenly decided to go on a diet? This story had an unexpected ending. The South Korean intelligence agency, which always keeps an eye on the unpredictable neighbor to the north, confirmed that Kim had indeed decided to adopt a healthier lifestyle. It seems he finally became concerned about his health. This incident shows that even the simplest changes in the appearance of the North Korean leader can turn into a global news crisis. Perhaps because everyone knows that a change in leadership in this mysterious country can have dire consequences for global peace. But what is the most dangerous part of the North Korean story? While its people suffer from hunger, its leader has focused all his attention on building deadly weapons. These days, it seems that all Kim Jong-un's focus is on expanding military capabilities. A country that now possesses about 50 nuclear weapons and regularly conducts missile tests. Imagine a country where its people have to collect human waste for agricultural fertilizer, spending its money on building atomic bombs. And as for foreign relations, while most of the world tries to isolate North Korea, this country is strengthening its ties with its two powerful neighbors, Russia and China. It seems that a new power triangle is forming. Tensions between North Korea and South Korea continue, and relations with the United States are better described as complex. With this volume of weapons of mass destruction and these tense relationships, who knows what will happen next? Thank you for staying with us until this point in the video. Goodbye.